All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today in the summer sessions, the Anthology of Enlightenment, with special guest star, master teacher. He did not like to be announced like that, but he is the special for today. And so master teacher, and so yes, you. The master teacher is not really unknown to us. We have used him, so to speak, or what he's expressing a lot in the last half year, and even before that too. And so today, the introduction to him will be a little different, and it will happen, with a meditation. It will happen with, with a part of his talk, Sip of the Holy Grail. And that's specifically an introductory tape that we'll listen to, just like, I think 9 minutes. 6 would be enough, but it's like 9 minutes. We expose ourselves to 9 minutes of the talk and see what happens. But before that, we start first with the meditation. And this meditation is illustrated with pictures that he made. He made some drawings at a certain point in time. And they were always like exhibited in one of the restaurants of the academy. Well, I'll come back to that later. Because we're really looking at, okay, so what happened with the master teacher? And what is your part in it, you could say. And what is master teacher and what is he certainly not? So he's certainly is not a master teacher that looks for followers and wants to have a lot of people walking behind him. He always expressed that he did not have any followers. And if you would think you were a follower of him, he would address that personally to you. Like, this is an individual responsibility. I'm not responsible for your thinking. And like this is what he brought back to you, to take full responsibility yourself. But he was very clear in that. So continuing with the meditation, that is always the perfect moment to be still, to come to your center, to relax into that. So that's exactly what we're going to do now. So thank you. Light in heaven, meditation. Not one light in heaven but goes with you. Not one ray that shines forever in the mind of God, but shines on you. Heaven is joined with you in your advance to heaven. When such great lights have joined with you to give the little spark of your desire the power of God Himself, can you remain in darkness? You are coming home together after a long and meaningless journey that you undertook apart and that led nowhere. You have found your brother, and you will light each other's ways. And from this light will the great rays extend back into darkness and forward unto God, to shine away the past and so make room for His eternal presence, in which everything is radiant in the light.
Il n'est pas une seule lumière au ciel qui ne t'accompagne, pas un seul rayon brillant à jamais dans l'Esprit de Dieu qui ne brille sur toi. le ciel s'est joint à toi dans ton avancée vers le ciel. Peux-tu rester dans les ténèbres quand de si grandes lumières se sont jointes à toi pour donner à la petite étincelle de ton désir la puissance de Dieu lui-même? Toi et ton frère rentrez ensemble chez vous après un long et insignifiant voyage que vous aviez entrepris séparément et qui ne menait nulle part. Tu as trouvé ton frère et vous vous éclairerez le chemin l'un l'autre. Et de cette lumière, les grands rayons s'étendront vers l'arrière jusque dans les ténèbres et vers l'avant jusqu'à Dieu, pour dissiper le passé et faire place ainsi à sa présence éternelle, en laquelle tout est radieux dans la lumière.
All right. Thank you so much for joining. So this was a meditation. He used these words many times. Like this was in the Great Awakening booklet, and he used that booklet in the last years many times, and every occasion that we came together. So that's why I used it now too. And the drawings that you saw, he did make them at a certain point in time. So that's something. So that's nice to see some creative expression. We will see that with the mother too. She plays the harmonium, so we will listen to some music, and that's what I love to see. You know, like that's great. Yeah, expressing in various ways. That's lovely. And so here now, master teacher. Yeah, that's. I never did it this way, so I was like reading his Wikipedia description is really new to me. I'm not really interested in it, but I share it because it tells you something. That's why I use it. Charles Buell Anderson is his full name, and he never used that name after his spiritual awakening. He was always Dear One. That's it. Master teacher, Dear One. The old man, they had a couple of names, but not so many. But he didn't like to be called Charles Buell Anderson because he wasn't that any longer. So he was born in 1926 and he passed in 2008. Anderson described his spiritual awakening as a spontaneous experience he had in 1979. A certain pair of earlier extraordinary experiences Anderson had may offer some insight into Anderson's later experience of spiritual awakening. The first of these two earlier extraordinary experiences was Anderson's World War II experience in Nagasaki, Japan, when he was 18 years old, I think. This experience appears to have made a deeply profound and formative impression upon him. Anderson wrote that his second such experience came 26 years later in 1971 during a near-death experience he had. Anderson wrote that during this second such experience he had a certain space of peace and happiness while lying on what he presumed would be his deathbed, and that also during his second event he received a spontaneous healing from cirrhosis of the liver. And it goes on one particular day, at one particular moment in time, I found myself standing directly in the center of this unspeakable, indeed unthinkable devastation that had to have been caused by someone or something. At that one time I was filled with complete rage, a wrenching, seething, frustrating, insatiable need for revenge. But against what or whom? It had no point of location, no focus of causation. In effect, no one to blame, no one to hold responsible. It became a passion of intense revulsion for myself, for this world, and for any and all members of the human species. A contained certainty from deep within me that all of us, everyone on this earth, all were totally guilty together. And then, at that one moment in time, the light of an inner peace enveloped me. It became a space in time where a new resolution appeared, and with it the message, look at this as a new beginning. So in this specific moment was in fact the moment that he started teaching truth, because he had no other options any longer. So this great devastation that he underwent, and seeing that it actually he wasn't able to focus it on anyone, project it on anything, not even on himself. Like he was hopeless with doing something with it. And then suddenly something appears to happen to him, like something happens to him in which there's a complete change that he had no idea, but he recognized it as the light, as that which dissolves everything that seems to be conflict before. And yeah, so this is of course his own revelation, you could say. It is his own experience, but there's something there to recognize for sure. Like in fact what he says in terms of we're all guilty of everything, he used that a lot in his teaching, because it's like one bit of guilt is all guilt. Like if you think you're a little bit guilty, that would be impossible. No, if you're feeling guilt, you're guilty of everything. And if you take a look at that, you can actually use that as a way to see that whatever you undertake in this limited perspective of yourself is in fact a total attack upon yourself, up to the moment that it isn't any longer. And see that change, that moment of change, this is really where he was always, he represented that change, and is still representing that change, I can tell you that. So in order to be exposed to this a little bit, even for 6 minutes or 9 minutes, I don't know exactly how long this will take, but it is so incredibly profound what he's presenting if you listen to it. It's just amazing. All right, so we're listening to Master Teacher, 6 to 9 minutes of his talk, A Zip from the Holy Grail. And it's coming from this book transcribed into this book, but in fact the talk is just available like on the EV Hub website, on the EV Hub YouTube channel too. And it's just a totally amazing talk. So this is the early years, as it's been called. So it's 1980s where this one was recorded. Now you see that in 2008, 7, 8, he made totally different videos where he basically not even directly used words for teaching, but more stepped into musical mind training with Mozart, with Glenn Miller, with all of his favorite artists, and using that as a way to, say, tune in to a frequency more than anything else. Basically, and I'll come back to that later too, like basically what he offers you continuously is to learn to think in a revelatory way. Now that's pretty new, I can tell you that. So the revelatory way is that in fact you're opening up, not trying to discover what he's saying, but actually just receiving what he is saying, and seeing that actually does something with you. Like there's a communication beyond the words that directly speaks to you, and you can zone out with that, and you can say literally disappear in that easily. Now this is a revelatory way of experiencing this, and this is available, and he actually expresses it and in how to do that, and that is the way of communication. Like if it would be a communication from A to B, it is not communication. No, this is more like you hear him talk, and while he talks, you already know what he's going to say, and you know, it's like, yes, this is absolutely what I want to hear. This is like the first step in revelatory thinking. Very helpful, because it doesn't need any figuring out what he's telling you. So despite of what he's saying, you could say, like, despite of what he's saying, you can totally get where he's coming from and communicate with that. In fact, he's representing the present moment. So let's listen to Master Teacher.
Where is the dilemma of fracturedism or duality? In lack of what is termed in a religious sense, love. No one on this planet practices love. Hear this. Because if you did, you wouldn't be here. Your definition in duality of what love is not true. To you, love is finding security to fend off the inevitable death that you at this perception think is real and refuse to look at. Love can be nothing else but that to you. Finally, bottom line. Love, finally, taking out the ideas you have about it in regard to moonlight, graspation, copulation, whatever else you think occurs in love. Love is finally only communication. I want to say this again, and I said it before. It is finally only my ability to communicate to you who I am. You see? If we share Romeo and Juliet symphony that's playing now in totalness, you and I are totally in love. How could we help but be? We are energizing and feeling the same responses spiritually that occur in us as we recognize that we are one thing. That we are finally only one thing. You see? That's what love is. Does it have to do with coupling? Not really. You could walk into the United Nations tomorrow, and if everybody could suddenly communicate with each other, all war would cease. Everybody would immediately give of themselves and become whole. Of course. Okay. Your inability to love or communicate is because of your inability to see who you are. You think you have to protect something, and you walk around trying to protect it. You think that there's an element in you that has to defend itself. What do you defend yourself against? Huh? Why are you afraid? Huh? What are you afraid of? What is it? Why are you fearful? You can't love because you're fearful. You can't love because you don't know that I'm you. The difference in you and I right now is I can extend to you and know that you're me, and I love you totally and absolutely, I assure you. And the only manner in which I can do that is by knowing that you're me. Because I must love myself first before I can love you. It won't work any other way. If I have a residual of doubt in me through a non-awakening, or because I haven't become whole, that somehow I'm not okay, it is impossible for me not to project that onto you. It can't be done. You see? That's why we teach that all judgment is self-judgment. What else could it be but that? Who else could you judge but yourself? If you judge yourself falsely, you will automatically judge everything outside yourself falsely. Instead of extending the truth of you from you, you will project it from you in your isolation. You see? If you look at me now and say there's some sort of a weird guy standing up there with a dirty shirt on and no socks, and he's waving his arms around, and I wonder who he is, what have you done? You've identified yourself, have projected out from yourself, and everything that you've accumulated in your brain, which is a facsimile about this level of consciousness, you are trying to correlate to determine who I really am. So, what do? We start with a premise, and you start with this premise right now, and put everything else aside. Either everything I'm saying to you now is absolutely true, or there's no truth in it. Now what are you going to do? Now can you judge? Aha, I got you. Now your mind's going to go, oh, that can't be. Some of the things he says might be okay, but then some of the things I think that he might say might not be okay, because some of the things he says are Spinoza, and some of them are Neoplatoism, and some of them are probably Kant, and some of them are Jesus Christ or Buddha, or Dr. Fu Manchu, or whoever the hell else you think is influencing your thinking. That's absurd. All you're doing is you're just categorizing in your mind at this level what you think is true. Since you don't know who you are, you can't possibly judge anything here. It's absolutely impossible. If you have an opinion about something, it's wrong. Because the earth is wrong. No truth here. Impossible. No justice here. Impossible. Unless you will allow it to be. Unless you will allow it to be true. Unless you will allow it to be just. Through your own purity. Through your own innocence. Through your coming to know who you are. Through your establishment of your invulnerability and your power. Through your surrender. Through your translation or transformation. No other way. Is that religious? I don't know. I told you earlier, religion today on earth is a science, not a religion, not a returning, not a recollection, not a coming back to who you are. You are evolving. You conceive that you are evolving, therefore you must evolve to something. If there's something, you must have been there originally. If you can conceive of it, it must be true. Astounding. Astounding idea. You have it now in your mind. When you go out of here today, you remember you have chosen to be what you are. Okay? There is no outside force that is making you the way you are. It's impossible. Do you have it? Yeah, but how do you facilitate it? Yes.
Then I've chosen not to know what I am.
Well, why would you do that?
I don't know.
No, you don't believe me. No, you don't believe that you have a choice. So now you've identified yourself as self and told me you've chosen not to know. No, if you knew, you would know automatically because it's transformative.
But when you say you, are you not referring to me as a personality, or are you referring to me as God?
Do you know me and love me absolutely as being you?
No.
Okay, well, I get that. When you do, then you'll know. Remember, it's still your idea. You are now expressing an idea from some state of judgment that you have made. It's not true. It's very difficult. Because every time you express yourself, you're only coming from where you are. I say to you absolutely, and I want you to hear this, this is the most important thing you'll ever hear, there is no such thing as individual personalities. You hide on this earth because you think you're different from me. You're not. You got a boil on your rear? Huh? You hide something. I'm not going to let you know that something is wrong. I don't care. There's no secrets here. What is it you would keep secret? That you're lustful, that you're dirty, that you're blah. No, that isn't true. We share a totally common heritage of truth. You are on earth because you're hiding. Those of you who think that you are on a spiritual path to the extent that you strive to do good and that, let me say this to you. You're actually hiding. You are afraid of the truth because the truth will make you whole, and if you become whole, it will be unto all things, and you will lose your individuality. Listen to me. When you totally come to know that you are God, you will still be just as you are now. Remember, there's only one consciousness. You have an idea that in your transformative process that you're not going to know who you are, or that the death process, because you equate it with no thing, will stop your identity. It won't. It won't. You can't leave consciousness. You can't die. This is very fundamental to everything that we teach. You are here solely because you think you're going to die. That's why you're on earth, huh? No other reason. You think you can die. You can't.
So any questions? See, it is that fundamental, isn't it? So it's like it also seems totally impossible what he's sharing, what he puts in front of you. It's like there's no such thing as individual personalities. Well, okay, good luck. And like nobody on earth practices love. Just that you know. So it's like, so what is this then? What is this then that there's such thing as love, but how can you experience it then? And this, I think, is the great part of the change that is occurring, or the metamorphosis that Master Teacher is talking about, in fact, in all his videos. It's like the change that to you seems impossible is exactly what this is about. Like, in fact, that becomes your certainty. The impossibility becomes your certainty. It is impossible in your mind. That's why it is certain. Now, this is huge. But see, I don't want to get into the philosophy of this, or it is not a philosophy. So it's more like, no, this is a different spiel. It is more like it will come to you on a spontaneous, in a spontaneous way. You cannot figure it out because your equipment to figure out is limited. You will never be able to do that. Now, he gives many examples of that, and also in what I call the, as the title of this meeting, in fact, is like the paradox of eternal life. So one of the things that he says is this, is like, and there are only black crows, for instance. He gives an expression like that. There are only black crows. And then in that, inherent in that expression is, so there must be white too, otherwise you didn't have to mention that. Or if I only have 1 penny, I'm very poor. Now I give you a penny and you're twice as poor. You know, it's like you define yourself with your own limitation. And this is interesting. So like here's really where a key is being offered. Like you cannot help yourself, say, looking, judging, perceiving in limitation, because that is all that you, as you know yourself, represents, up to the moment that you undergo a metamorphosis and actually, say, disappear into a moment of light. Then everything starts to make perfect sense, and you also start to come into the realm of, now I know what love is. Up to that point, you know that what you do in the relationships is like of a very low frequency, you could say, is trying to make it work. In fact, an expression of grievances over from this one to that one, and trying to stay in not too much conflict. That would be like a major accomplishment in a human relationship. Now, that has nothing to do with love. So you look for comfort, to be with somebody, literally, or someone. You look for comfort and safety, but that is not necessary because there's nothing that can attack you. So all these parts come together in many of the talks of Master Teacher. And of course, this is like the fundamental part where you, in fact, dive into the impossibility of this. And that being the only helpful point for you to recognize that you have no idea what's going on. And you literally don't know who you are. But the only thing that you want is to come to know that. And with that, if that is your, say, your one desire, can it happen? Like, in fact, when that desire is total and pure, then it immediately happens that it can come to you. So that is your certainty. So it's certain because it's impossible. And this literally was the slogan of the academy that was founded by, say, students and teachers of Master Teacher. It was a teacher's academy, master's academy, whatever. It's like, and their slogan was, it is certain because it's impossible. Now, that's of course very interesting. So this is one part. Another thing that I love to share is some more expressions from this first talk that is registered in the book, The Return of the Heretic. Here. It's still available. You can buy it on Amazon. It's a great book. It's like unbelievable what's in there. And you think it's thin. Well, this is like 10 years of transformation, deep transformation. The ideas that are presented will keep you busy for a moment. All right, so we continue with some of the expressions. You see, this was one of the expressions that you heard in the talk. The difference in you and me right now is that I can extend to you and know that you are me and I love you totally and absolutely. I assure you, the only manner in which I can do that is by knowing that you are me. And I must love myself first before I can love you. It won't work any other way. If I have a residual doubt of doubt in me through a non-awakening or because I haven't become whole, that somehow I am not okay, it is impossible for me not to project that onto you. It can't be done. Can you see? So this is really interesting, and I emphasize this for a very specific reason, because it was like, I remember the moment, it was somewhere in 2002, where a master teacher came to Holland. We organized like a huge event, and suddenly I was standing right in front of him after a day of sessions, but it's like I was right in front of him, and actually it occurred to me that I saw that I could love him totally, like that just naturally happened. I completely disappeared into that. Like that was to me like a new experience. I never saw anything like that. Now I cannot really express that, of course, because it's my own experience, but it's more like then it starts to make so much sense what love is. Love is literally, it's like it's impossible to see your brother. I've emphasized that a lot, but it's like it's impossible to see a brother without completely disappearing into him. Like you are one with your brother. That experience is in fact what love is. Total communication, total dissolving into one another, like just like that, and recognizing your common source. So that's so incredible. Now that's beautifully presented. So it's like it is great to be with the master in that sense, because he allows you to love him totally. And like that was like a possibility to practice that, to bring that into expression, in fact, or to open my heart so far that there was literally nothing holding me back. So, and that, of course, you do this with one brother, and in fact you recognize you can do it with all your brothers, because that is all the same. Now that is great to see how that evolves after experiences like these. Yeah, because it is like the beauty of it is to come to the meeting place where that actually can occur. So this is why we come together and also practice this when we meet, or it's like, yeah, this is a possibility, like to release the fear of letting that occur. Now you don't need a physical appearance in that sense for it, but it can help. But that was my own experience with that. Those of you who think that you're on a spiritual path, to the extent that you strive to do good in that, let me say this to you. You're actually hiding. You are afraid of the truth, because the truth will make you whole. And if you become whole, it will be unto all things, and you will lose your individuality. Well, listen to me. When you totally come to know that you are God, you will still be just as you are now. Yeah, it's like you're going to be yourself no matter what you try to do. So that's the You could say the slogan of EV-Hub too, like just be yourself, because you're going to be yourself no matter what. And that's not necessarily an identification or an individuality as just you expressing yourself as you. So this is great too. It's like, no, there's basically no such thing as a spiritual path unless you want to use it to delay yourself because you're hiding. Why not say break down? Why not just say break down into the total guilt or into the total suffering and emerge out of that as a transformed being? Like letting that occur, being so completely open to love that an actual occurrence is happening in which you disappear in a quasar of light. This is also one of his expressions, but it's like that is the experience. You suddenly shift into light, this is what a miracle is. Suddenly you shift into light, into invisibility, where you experience yourself as a frequency and not anything else, like not a body somewhere doing things or having certain ideas. Or no, and all that disappears, all that dissolves. So this is still based on the early years, and these are interesting because they're very instructional. So all parts of the human consciousness are being looked at, in fact. Like, what do you think like this? What do you think like that? It becomes more and more clear that what the denial of the love of God is. When you recognize that is what you are doing, how can you not feel guilty? And do you need to feel guilty? No, except for just one moment, letting that be total and sinking or allowing a change to occur right in that instant. So that's really something else. You share mutual pain with other entities who hope that things are going to work out, that things will come to pass and that will be okay here. My dear one, you cannot perfect an illusion. I have said it many times to you, and I say it again. The fault of the earth is the conception of the earth. The fault of the earth is your idea about it. Is there a remedy for duality? How would you, by a process, remedy the conception of duality? Yeah, totally impossible. How can you perfect something that isn't perfect? Communication. How do I communicate? Have I said one single thing to you that you don't already know? No. Is it possible for me to say anything to you that you don't know? No. You have limited the amount that you think you know. You know everything. I absolutely guarantee you know everything. Now I said this, I shared this also to be able to express about, like, you know everything. Now that's really interesting to see that at work, and being with Master Teacher, he could tell you exactly what you not necessarily directly recognized from yourself. Excuse me, but he would tip it. He would literally touch it. He could tell you how this and that is working within you, and you would recognize it as part of yourself or certain tendencies that you had. He was also able to so-called correct that. So that is very interesting. Like, in the not knowing, you become all-knowing. You are all-knowing as long as you think that you don't know, in the sense of keeping your mind open. Like, no, the basic ideas, you know everything. And you can start to learn to practice that too, by just, in fact, being, for instance, as an example, being in contact with someone, not communicating words, but actually starting to, making contact with whoever is with you. You're able to tell many things about the one that you meet. And why would you do that? Well, to see, in fact, to learn to trust that you know everything. Like, no, even going into such a situation or reading your news app, you already know how things are. You recognize beyond the words what is actually occurring. And this expands and expands and expands more and more. And which is really interesting, of course, because it's more like you're only limited by your own ideas about yourself. So in fact, you're all knowing. And this is something that you will recognize when your mind is open and whole. So, yeah, this was, I said, these were some expressions in the book, like the Holy Grail of the sip of the Holy Grail chapter from the heretic. And yeah, was Master Teacher a heretic? Yes, of course, because he's teaching, say, the religion of your nature. He's in fact bringing it back to you completely. The science of your mind. He taught the science of mind, the religion of your nature, and the philosophy of your being. And so these three aspects come back a lot in the beginning, in the early talks. All right, so this is that part. Now I love to share with you something that I came up with in preparation. So reality is not something about it's not about something. Reality is not about having ideas. It is being who I am, not separating itself from the holistic science of fundamental awareness. At no single moment can you determine a change, and this is the paradox of change. The caterpillar doesn't recognize he changed into a butterfly. What is it but a quantum leap to perfect singular self-reality? Nothing is outside of you. Outside of you there is nothing. The grace of God is all. The paradox of perception. You see a world that is over and gone. All ravens are black. Tells you some are white. What difference does it make? A limited self-definition will block the wholeness from your sight. Paradox of self-definition. I only have a dime to my name. By receiving another dime, you are twice as poor. The solution here? Give the dime away and don't let it define you. Protect all things you value by the act of giving it away. The paradox of the spiritual path, that what is looking for it will never get it. It is the denial of it. The moment you accept salvation individually, you jump into heaven. This world is an illusion of the concepts of your own determination to resist the inevitable transformation of you from separation to wholeness. So you see, this is then the so-called poem. Um, See, all fundamental expressions, and this is from the book, then say the paradox of eternal life, which is, we looked at that before. Excuse me. We looked at that before and went pretty deep into it. So, but it's a great way to look at things, because in fact you deal with the paradox continuously, unless you let everything be whole and it disappears into oneness. So the paradox is apparent, like it's right here with you, as long as you value it and see it as a definition of yourself. So Master Teacher talks here about self-judgment and all this. It's like, as soon as you have an idea about something, you're only defining yourself and not the other guy or the other thing. And that's say great one to stay close with, to remember in your meditations, because look what you do. Like that, you constantly have an idea about something. And until you don't, of course, but it's like you constantly have ideas. This is the only thing that the mind does. In perception, it sees something and has an idea about it. And you start to become aware of that is an automatic responder to perception. So it's like judgment is in fact what perception is. So not valuing any of it, you stay out of the consequences, in fact. So like it becomes, you look at it with disinterest, and whatever seems to be occurring. Now, it is not that you walk around like a depressed kind of zombie, not letting anything affect you. That's not it either. So there's an interesting thing. Like, it is just part of the so-called process. If you get stuck in your self-definition, then a change can occur. But only then. And is that a spiritual path? No, of course that is not. So in this one moment you get stuck inside yourself, and you will have to ask for help, in fact, of allow a change to occur in order to get out of it. Now this is the only occurrence, in fact, where this is heading to. So that's great. So if Master Teacher would have accepted followers, there would have been a spiritual path or a spiritual teacher. Like, none of that occurred, really. It's like, no, if you think I'm separate from you, you missed the whole story. If you think that what I'm telling you, you don't know, and I know more than you, you're terribly mistaken. No, it's about the recognition of you, about yourself, like letting the love that you are be total, and let nothing stop you. Now this is in fact where the academy was set up for too. Like, there were probably in the beginning years 400 or 500 people coming together every year, and when I hopped in there, probably 250. So it's like daily sessions, in fact, in which you practice this, having somebody in front of you who will not take any human relationship, in fact, no human interaction whatsoever. It would literally be impossible to do that with him, and with other brothers too. It's like, now you start to learn to stay in your alignment, to stay in your communication, to stay in your gratitude, and take it from there, you could say. Like, in fact, being open to love continuously. And this is very interesting to see that happen, in fact, because it is like, you know that it exists, you recognize it immediately. It is not that you feel comfortable with it right away, at least not I. So it took a moment to get used to that and to melt into that, in fact. So that's why I love to share that with you, because this is a real possibility to come into a new idea about yourself, to allow this to happen to you. And then you see that the Course in Miracles, that everything that Master Teacher says is exactly that, what has been shared. Like, if nothing I see means anything, I don't have to respond to it. If I'm never upset for the reason I think, I cannot be upset about someone or some occurrence or some event. So that starts to make perfect sense. especially when you're coming in a deeper sense of, centering into yourself, when you start to recognize that you are what everything is. So that is so great as an experience. So it's like, can you do that? No, you can't do that. It's impossible. That's why it's certain. And this is always like, excusez le mot, it pisses everyone off, because there's literally nothing you can do but let that occur. No, it's impossible. You cannot do it. Does it mean that it cannot happen? No, there's an absolute possibility. And it will happen as soon as you give up trying to make anything happen. You know what I'm saying? It's like, this is so totally being open. Mind opening is not reserving some ideas for next week or for tomorrow. No, your mind is open, it's blown open. And the only thing that can enter into it is light. Then you know that you're at the point where you actually start to love. So yeah. It is so interesting. It's so great. So it's like the thing you think you do a spiritual path. No, you're actually hiding. You're hiding in your spiritual path. You use it to delay your homecoming. Well, that was not the reason why you started it. No, but you made a little agreement with yourself that you will never get this, and that your certainty lies in death. Well, this is why you do that. Now you say like, no, that's not true. And it's like, well, we'll see then. So as long as you believe you're an individual personality and you respond in defense and all this, or justifying yourself in some kind of way, you're missing it. So there's nothing attacking you, in other words. All right, so this is the introduction to Master Teacher. This in the talk says it all, in fact, and the meditation too. It's like such an incredible possibility to become still in this and letting one moment be total. And becoming so, in fact, so safe and secure inside yourself that you allow that change to happen. That's all that's asked. That's the simplicity of salvation. It really is. So, this is what I wanted to share about Master Teacher and his, and his legacy. And it's like what he would stand for, what he's representing in this moment. As you have seen, he's like right here, learning or teaching us, in fact, still to come to a revelatory thinking. And that's much more common than you think. So that's great. With that, we continue one day with that, for sure. So thank you so much. I'm going to play some 40s songs that were his favorites. He was actually, this is one little anecdote, of course. He told so many anecdotes you wouldn't believe, but this is one of them. He was actually a DJ in wartime. He would do the radio in Chicago, I think. So he played one song. I will play him once, but he would play that song, I think, 12 times or something like this. So that's interesting if you hear that on your war radio.